You're listening to
the Beer O'Clock.
The Beer O'Clock Show.
You're listening to the Beer O'Clock Show.
It's Beer O'Clock, and this is the Beer O'Clock Show, bringing you beers from around the world, around the country, or for tonight, from around Essex. My name is Mark, and joining me is an Essex boy himself, Stevie. Hello, Steve.
All right, mate. How you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Very good. Also joining us, the man behind this week's County Showcase, Focus on Essex, is beer blogger and a man whose tasting notes were referenced in the Domesday Book. It's Justin Mason.
Hello, Justin. Gentlemen.
How are you doing?
Very well. Yourselves?
I'm doing all right, mate. Good. So we've got a bit of an Essex heavy show tonight. We've got 4 beers coming up. And Justin's going to run throughout the show all about these beers, but just to go through what they are, we have Van Kannor from Brentwood Brewing, Brewer's Gold from Crouchvale, Xylonite from Malden Brewing, and Hop Black from Wibbler's Brewery. Now, Justin, this is kind of all referencing back to a series you've been doing on your blog about Essex beers. So why don't you just kick off and let us all know what it's all about?
Sure. Well, it's obviously I've lived in Essex all my life, and it's something that Essex is how. Obviously, I feel very passionate about Essex beers, and with the rise in craft beer and what's been happening in London, I think my eyes have been turned to the capital for quite some time. But my heart's always been in Essex, and so what I've decided to do is there's enough people living in London writing about London beers, but concentrate on what's happening in my home county. And I've talked to lots of brewers here, there, and everywhere. I talk to drinkers, publicans, just to get an idea of where we are and if any direction of where we're going. Obviously, Essex is a big historic county. It's home to the oldest recorded town in the UK, which is obviously Colchester, Camulodunum. Although there's no actual evidence of brewing it in there. We were once quite a large hop growing area in the late 18th century. There were 650 acres of hops being cultivated in Essex, mainly centred around Braintree, which the wool trade and hops were sort of gathered together. And people were moving through. They were cultivated, but within 100 years or so, that was down to 207 acres as Kent sort of took over. Obviously, I don't know, lots of people probably aware, but Essex was a much bigger county prior to 1965. It went right into Stratford, encompassing places like Leighton and Walthamstow, all the way into what is now the heartland of some of the craft brewing in East London. One of the things, obviously, Romford as well was important. The Coop Brewery in Romford, a lot of people will have heard of. I remember growing up and the smell in Romford of the hops and the brewing process going on. Something interesting that I've found when I've been looking into Coop is that it started in 1908 as the Starringham Brewery, which was established by Mr. George Carden. However, it was purchased in 1799 by Mr. Edward Ind and a Mr. Grosvenor. But 17 years later, Mr. John Smith took over Mr. Grosvenor's place, and he left to form his own brewery in West London, taking with him the head brewer at the Star Brewery, which was a Mr. Fuller. And so they found a Mr. Turner, and that became he was Mr. Turner, and that was he found Mr. Fuller, and it became Fuller, Smith and Turner, which is now known as Fuller's Brewery, which is in West London. So the origins of Fuller's started in Essex, which is quite interesting. The oldest brewery used to be, alongside that one, was Ridley's, closed by Greene King. It was sold to Greene King and then closed. And the oldest brewery now in Essex started in 1981. And that's the Crouchvale Brewery, and that's the beer we're going to start off with, is the Crouchvale Brewer's Gold. This beer is 15 years old. would you believe? It's made with
I was
Brewers Gold
hoping for a
hop.
fresh one, to be honest with you. It's 15 years old. It's supposed to be dodgy.
Let's say it's been brewed for 15 years.
Oh, Steve.
It's on form. Yeah, it started off as a seasonal, summer seasonal for Crouchvale, and it was so popular that it's taken it's around about 50% of their capacity that they brew Brewers Gold. It won Champion Beer of Britain in 2005 and 2006. It can be found on cask in many places around the region, and it's a very, very good, and I hope you like it.
It's this is a beer we've done before, not on the show, but those people that have followed everything that we've ever done will know that we've done this as a 60-second review for Hours by Mal.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a beer that Mark and I are quite familiar with, but it's nice to actually turn the spotlight on it and give it its own 15 minutes of fame on the show proper.
Indeed. So it pours a lovely light gold colour, quite active coming out of the bottle.
Yep, it's got a lovely fluffy head on it as well.
It's a very, very light beer to look at, but I think when you taste it, it's quite it's deceptively full-bodied. It's more full-bodied than you perhaps expect.
Yeah, so this is a 4% pale ale.
The aroma on it is dare I say it, there's almost a Belgian quality to the aroma. It's kind of got that syrupy sweetness on the aroma, not so much the banana and the cloves that you get from a Belgian beer, but it's got that syrupiness on it. There's maybe a little bit of orange sherbet just on the aroma there as well. But have you guys both started tucking in already without me?
Yeah,
Indeed,
get into it, mate.
we have, yeah.
Oh, all right, then cheers.
Cheers. It's got a lovely golden syrup, sticky sweetness at the front of it, on the flavours, I think.
There's I pick up quite a lot of. There's some grapefruit in there, whole grapefruit, and some blackcurrant flavours as well. If you mix the two together, and that's quite. It really showcases the Brewers Gold hop. I think better than any beer that has it in it. It's just. This is probably, if you're going to think about an Essex beer, I think probably this is the beer that most people will think of, and most people will have had. The variant of this beer used to be the Brewers Gold single hop in Marks and Spencer's. Unfortunately, due to lack of sales, and I can't think why, they no longer have this one. So Essex is no longer represented in Marks and Spencer's, something I took up with them recently. Well,
that's really disappointing, because that was that was a good representation of this beer, like most of the M&S beers are of their original counterparts.
I think because they're not exact copies. I think M&S wanted more of a malt character from this. Don't quote me on that, but it didn't sell, so they dropped it, which I'm disappointed. But there you go. But I could.
Yeah, I mean, there's hardly any malts coming through on this. It's all the hop that's showcasing here. It is a really refreshing beer. It's a really easy beer to drink as well at 4%. Very much a sessionable beer, this, but there's lots of for me there's lots of citrus in there at the beginning, in the middle, at the end. There's hardly any bitterness, so to speak of, but it's just got a lovely clean finish to it. It's a real good supping beer, this one.
It leaves quite a good resonance of the hop character in your mouth after you've swallowed it. It hangs around, and you can almost chew it around in your mouth for some time. So
Justin, tell us. Obviously, you've selected 4 beers for tonight. That was the challenge that we set you when we first started talking about the Essex Showcase. And I know you had quite a time selecting the 4 beers that you wanted to feature. What made you settle on the Brewers Gold from Crouchvale?
I think because it is a beer that people will have heard of, that you can come into Essex and without really looking too hard, you could probably find it. Well, I hope you could find it. Someone could point you in the direction. It's in supermarkets. You can pick it up in Waitrose, for example. It's in quite a lot of Waitrose stores. It's one of those beers that I think is accessible, whereas I think the other three tonight aren't quite so well known as and accessible. But this is probably the beer that, for me, at any rate, says I am an Essex beer.
Okay, and tell us just a little bit about the brewery as well. Give us a bit of background on Crouchvale.
Sure, yeah. Well, as I said, it was founded in 1981 by two beer enthusiasts. It was Colin Bockin, who's still with the brewery, and Rob Walster. Rob now runs the Prince of Wales in Stowe Marys. Don't know if you've heard of that pub, but it's well, if you've not been, it's on the way to Burnham. Well worth a visit. They quite often, I'm told, have if Brewer's Gold is delivered fresh from the brewery, it quite often sell out that night. That's how much people will travel and drink it there, and it will sell out that night. It's named for the nearby River Crouch. It's just outside South Whittam Ferrers. It's a capacity of 5,000 barrels a year. It's got, apart from Brewer's Gold, there are 4 regular beers, which are Blackwater Mild, Essex Boys Best Bitter, Yakima Gold, and Amarillo. Although they have lots of seasonal specials. I don't know if you managed to have any of the Mosaic, which was released for the second time this year, but that was absolutely stunning. It was really good showcase of the Mosaic hop, and it's something that Crouchvale do exceptionally well. Is take a hop and put it in a beer, and they will literally hop it to death. But you get all the character, but really you just get the essence of the hop, and they do it so well. I think it's down to the cold filtering and the way they treat their bottles and treat their beer. But they're fantastic. It really is a fantastic brewery.
Yeah, I missed the Mosaic, but the one of theirs that I have enjoyed that they don't seem to have done this year is the one that they simply call Black, which was unsure whether it was an IPA or whether it was a stout or a porter, but it was just this cracking citrus hoppy black beer that I really enjoyed. But I think they've possibly retired it now as a beer.
Yeah, I think they did that. They released it in cask and in bottles, but the cask was very limited, as were the bottles. I think they just did it to play around with the idea of it being, this is not really a black IPA, it's not really a stout, it's not really a porter, it's not really any of those things. It fell sort of almost slap bang in the middle of all of them. And it was very good, but I think it was only a one-off, which is a shame.
Yeah, great shame. It's probably fair to say that tonight we're not drinking all of the beers that we've got in front of us. We are just doing tasters. So I don't know how you guys are getting on, but I've finished I did pour quite an extra large taster of the Brewers Gold just to get me going, and it's gone. It's left me with a lovely feel in my mouth, and I'm ready for the others. But how are you guys getting on?
Yeah, I'm done with mine.
Yeah, I'm enjoying more of mine. So it's a beer that I can drink several pints of. In fact, local pub to me has it on permanently, the Old Dog in Herongate, and it's always on good full. And this is the beer that my son can identify in a blind tasting. But there you go. He likes it so much. It's probably, if you name his favourite beer, and just in case there any officers of the law are listening, he's not a regular beer drinker, although we do allow him to have a little sip now and then.
He's more of a whiskey man.
Yeah, we do like to start him young in Essex.
All right, before we get on to the second beer, let's have a little run around the table and see what everyone's been drinking in the last week. Let's start with you, Steve.
Yeah, I've just I finished off the last few beers from the Ibria Discovery box. So I had the Nelson Sauvin Saison that you were talking about the other week. I really enjoyed that. Really talking of showcasing hops really well. That beer showcased it really, really well. And I actually, for a Saison, I actually enjoyed it. So stop the press. Yes, I did just say that. I enjoyed a Saison. Other than that, the only one that really stands out this weekend for me was, and I may have mentioned this one before, the Buxton have got a new red IPA called Red Point, which is absolutely stunning. It's caramelly, it's piney, it's full of slap you in the face hops. Just hats off again to Buxton Brewery for producing yet another fantastic beer.
Cool. How about you, Justin? What have you been up to, mate, lately?
I've had a couple of beers that I'd like to mention that I've had over the past few days. I managed to get hold of 3 Essex beers from the Hot Monster George's Brewery, who are not featuring tonight. But I had their Freak Show Simcoe, which is a Simcoe Pale Ale, which is a bit of a cracker. Their Ella hopped black IPA. So a black IPA, but exclusively made with Ella hops, which has got a lovely toastiness up front and a good grapefruit background from the Ella hop. And their Snake Oil Stout, which is full of black currant, black cherry. It was a little bit flat, sadly, but licorice, coffee, and dark chocolate. It really
that sounds like a great combination.
It was absolutely fantastic. If it had a little bit more oomph, I think it would have been exceptional. But it was quite smooth as well, so it really just slid down. It was one of those beers that you go, oh blimey, it's gone, and it was a large bottle. So that was really good. Another one was given to me was another Essex one is Billericay Brewing's Clever Trevor, which is Trevor's newest brew. It's an ESB, but it tastes tantalizingly like a black IPA. Lots and lots of hops again. He's really hitting his stride with his hopping now. It's really all coming together. And I had a sneaky taste at the weekend of his Christmas beer, his Black Christmas Black IPA, and that's tasting like seriously dry coffee. So that proves to be, I think that's going to be a really good beer and a beer to look out for this Christmas in Essex.
Does it taste like cinnamon and other Christmas spices?
No, it doesn't. It hasn't got any Christmas spices in. It is purely a black IPA. You brewed it with Southeast Essex Canberra rather, and so that's going to be out over Christmas. And I'm looking to brew a black IPA with him for the Chelmsford Winter Beer Festival. But this one's going to have slightly higher ABV, and we're going to be putting raisins in to up the fermentable sugar. But so stay tuned for news on that.
Cool. What about you, Mark? Have you tucked into anything this week?
Oh, I had a big night on Thursday. Oh
yes, yeah. Go on then.
So people who follow me on Twitter, and obviously who doesn't follow me on Twitter, I was asking about, there's a bar near London Bridge, or right on London Bridge, called The Hydrant, which is a Fuller's bar. And I think it's relatively new. It's right by the monument. Because I was going to go there with some workmates. And it's called a craft and kitchen, basically. So we went there, almost like a typical city place. You get a lot of suits in there after about 5:30, 6 o'clock. But they have a great range of craft beers. So on the tap, it's pretty generic. So generic quote for a craft beer place. They had Jaipur on tap. They had Beavertown Quell. And those are the two that I kind of rotated against all night. But they also had a good series, or a good selection of cans and bottles in the fridges as well. So that was my Thursday night, going back and forth between Jaipur and Quell for 6 hours. That was pretty cool. And apart from that, I had. Remember, we got a batch of beers from Brewhive recently.
Oh yeah. They've been the point of much discussion on Twitter recently.
I had the Pale Brew, which is their English Endeavour IPA, which isn't that bad, but it's nothing to write home about. Another one of the beers that my father-in-law kindly picked up from me, thinking he was getting me some good craft beer. Maple Moon from Joseph Holt. Have you guys had that before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is a nice, clean ale, lovely woody notes all the way through the middle of it.
It's fairly sweet from what I can recall as well, I think.
It is. It got a bit of nice sweetness to it, yeah.
And that's featured a few times in JD Witherspoon's beer festivals. I think that's one of the beers that occasionally...
Yeah, it's a regular, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, cool. And the other two that I had from the High Drink, which was Pale Fire by Pressure Drop, and Little Creatures Pale Ale, which you can get anywhere, I'm sure. And that was my week.
That's an impressive week for you, mate. Just want to mention while you're talking about Fuller's there, I'm going to try and do this as seamless as possible. A lot of people who would have listened to our little revisited spin-off recently, we put Fuller's Bengal Lancer out. The good news is that that's actually their cask seasonal for December and January. So if you want to try and get yourself a pint of Fuller's Bengal Lancer on cask, your time is coming for that. So we were raving about it on the Revisited show about how great it would taste on cask. I'm certainly going to be searching that out over Christmas to try and find a pint of it.
So you inspired me to go into Sainsbury's and pick up some bottles of Fuller's following that episode. I picked up some Bengal Lancer, some London Porter, which I put into a long slow cooked chili the other day. And that came out very nicely
lovely.
Indeed. Yeah, it was really, really good. And some bottles of the 1845 as well, which is their 6.6%.
Nice.
So, yeah. So thanks for that. I hadn't had Fuller's in a while, and I like this beer. I'm going to go and get some.
Cool. Let's get on to, speaking of beer, onto the second beer. Which one is this?
This is the Wibbler's Hot Black, which is black IPA. Now, until recently, we didn't have many black IPAs in Essex, with Red Fox, Foxy Moron being one of the first ones. That's a great beer if you ever see that, particularly if you see it on cask. I had the Hot Monster the other night, the Yellow Black IPA, and the Billericay Christmas beer that's coming up. So that's the one that's coming up soon. And this one so far, which is obviously the Hot Black. Wibbler's started brewing in 2007. Phil Wilcox started off on a homebrew boot kit, but he upgraded the kit, and at the Malden Beer Festival in 2007, he entered a beer that he called Hoppy Helper, which is now part of the Wibbler's range, and it won beer of the festival. So that made him decide to go full-time, be a full-time brewer. He's a Beer Academy accredited beer sommelier, and he was joined for a bit by Nigel Sadler, who's just moved on actually. The beers are extremely popular around the region, and they're one of the few beers that do craft keg. And I think one of the only, I think Brentwood are the only other brewery that do one, with Essex Blonde and Odyssey, which is a premium lager that you can find. And I think the Dengue IPA is now available on keg. This beer, like the Brewer's Gold, was originally released as part of a Head Brewers premium range, but again it was so popular that it became a permanent addition. It's got Cascade hops, US Cascade hops, and they're added at 5 different stages throughout the brewing process for this beer. So I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, well, in the glass, it's, I don't want to be picky, but it's not really black. It's more dark red. But it has got a lovely, great big fluffy head, and it's a very lively bottle as well, which is a good sign of the bottle conditioning as well. Because camera says that this is real ale. It's got a logo on the bottle and everything. This one, this is proper beer from the regions. Yeah, on the nose, I'm not really getting a lot of the hops. Struggling to pick up anything really on the nose, but Go on.
I poured mine a little earlier, so I poured mine while we were just talking about the beers coming through, because I knew I was going to read that bit, and I didn't get anything at all. But now the head settled down, I'm getting a lot more of the hop coming through. Yeah. There's some
first thing I thought on the flavour was licorice. The minute I tasted it, that was the thing that really struck out for me, followed by a real strong bitterness. There's not a huge amount of body in this, but let's bear in mind it's a 4% beer, and that would suggest to me that I'm going to take a punt on this on cask would be stunning. I'm not sure it's working as well in the bottle.
No, and I can tell you it is exceptionally good. You get more of the hop character. I'm getting some sort of like roastiness, some probably caramelized meat. I think the dominant flavour for me is, dare I say, soy sauce. Don't know if you're getting any of that.
No, actually, I don't know whether I'm getting it, but I think it's the colour of soy sauce, and that might be playing. If it can play an illusion with your mind, with your taste buds, I'm not sure, but I'm really sadly not getting any of the roasted flavours. I'm getting none of that off of it. What I'm getting is a really a fairly bitter beer. I think if you were to close your eyes, you wouldn't know what colour this beer was. What about Mark? What about you, mate? Are you getting anything much else off this? I'm wondering if I've got mine too cold. Or not, because I'm disappointed.
Mine's been out of the fridge for about 40 minutes. I'm getting some coffee notes, some roasted notes coming in there. Like you're saying, there's not much body to it, but again, like you say, it's only 4%. It's a decent beer though. I'm not getting much more than that though. The bitterness doesn't hang around too long, but it's there long enough for you to get some value from it.
I'm going to have to come back to this. I think I've got mine too cold, because it's just killing. From what you guys are saying there, I should be getting more flavours out of this.
Grapefruit now. Yeah, I'm getting more and more grapefruit on the nose now, as it's warming up in my hands. An awful lot more.
I'm afraid I don't anything on the nose.
I'm definitely coming back to it. I think a little bit later on, because I want to find some of these flavours that you're talking about, because I'm really excited about what you're saying, and all I'm getting at the moment is cold fizziness.
Really, you see, I'm getting more and more. The aroma is really, really hitting me now. They can't all work, can they?
Well, no, but that's Justin. That's why I want to come back to it, mate, because I feel as though I'm not doing it justice. And again, you've taken time to select these beers as a representation of what the county can offer, and I want to make sure I come back and give them a go.
Well, I think actually a good place to be will be to visit it after the next beer, because it does contrast with this one. So after the Maldon, the Xylonite, you'll see this is a very different beer indeed. The next beer is quite a different beer. So we're now up to, I want to just interject here, we're now up to 31 breweries in Essex.
Oh wow!
With Mr. Watts his brewery. I think it's available now in Colchester, in the Victoria. I think his latest session bitter, I believe, is available there, with a porter to come maybe next week. And there's the Moody Goose brewery, which is opened recently, which is in the King William IV pub in Braintree. So there are 2 new breweries adding to the 29 that, since I wrote my introduction on the website in March. So it's good to see that we've got 2 new breweries. We've had one that I didn't mention that is now closed is Whittam Brewery, that was going from 2012 at the Woolpack. It's near you, Steve. Do you know where the Woolpack is?
I don't actually. I've got to admit, I don't frequent Whittam that often.
It wasn't that well known a brewery. They only had one beer, as far as I can gather, which is called a beer with no name, which is incidentally is a name that has been taken up quite rather on it by Billericay Brewing. So, but not the same beer. But apparently that was wound down sometime a little while ago and finally closed off and mothballed in spring this year. But it's encouraging to know that we've got quite a lot of brewers and breweries out there. 110 entries for Essex in the Good Beer Guide, which is no bad thing, although there are far more good pubs than that would lead you to believe. Again, I'll pick out Whittam as an example. The pub that makes it in Whittam is the Wetherspoons. Whereas you and I know went up, when we went to the White Hart, how good was the beer in there just before we went to the beer festival?
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me that sets the White Hart apart is they've got this kind of what they call a cask bar innovation, which is basically they've got, I think it's eight or 10 kegs that are all on gravity stations in a chilled unit. Or a refrigerated unit, so it's at perfect temperature, and they rotate those beers on, and you can get them poured straight from the cask. And it's what makes it stand out for me is that this is a Green King pub as well that's doing this, and they're not all Green King beers. They're beers that come from all over the county and all over the country. So if you do ever find yourself in Whittam, make your way to the White Hart and give the cask bar a go in there, because it's well worth a visit.
Yeah, I would second that. It's in fact we've got lots of great pubs. If you think where we have in our Essex Bottle Share in the Ale House in Chelmsford, how good Chelmsford is for beer now. Colchester's good for beer. So we're catching up. We need a centre that's going to hit it. Yeah, but we're getting there.
Well, before we get on to the third beer, Stevie, have you got some news for us, mate?
Yeah, some quick news this week, mate.
All right, here's some quick pips. Beep, 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 beep.
Okay, so Halcyon's been voted Europe's top beer. Of course it has, because it's the best beer in Europe.
Did you have all the votes?
I didn't vote at all, which is probably the interesting thing. But this was on a new website and app called Pint Please, and this was a study that was done by Anglia Ruskin University. So keeping it with tonight's theme, Anglia Ruskin University is based in Essex. From votes that have been cast across Europe, Halcyon came out at number 1 as the best beer in Europe. I'm going to say no more because it's fact. The second news item this week is Diageo has launched Hop House 13 Lager, which is a 5% ABV double hop lager brewed with Guinness yeast to target premium lager drinkers. And I can exclusively report that it's as shit as you imagine it will be, because I tried it the last time I was in Dublin. I wouldn't go out of your way to drink it, but if you do want to give it a try, it's called Hop House 13, and it will be available in most Green King and Stonegate pubs. That's the news.
Very good. All right, well, I won't be racing out to try that one then. Beer number 3. Justin, you want to do the honours, mate?
Sure, yeah. Beer number 3 comes from the Malden Brewery, known as Farmers, after its founder Nigel Farmer. Maldon's on the Blackwater estuary. It's a popular pool. Lots of people visit there to go sailing and so on and so forth. This particular beer is Xylonite, which is described as a strong golden ale, named after one of the ships boats that is in the port there. It's a sailing barge. It's a Thames sailing barge, Xylonite. It's 88 years old. Nigel started the brewery, as I said, in 2002 at the rear of the Blue Boar Hotel in Maldon. He started, it was an early retirement project for him. And all the beers can be found on Gravity Dispense at the bar there. If it's open, it was undergoing a major refurbishment last I was there. But never fear, you can still find the beer in the Farmer's Yard micro pub that they recently opened in the High Street that I wrote a little piece on. So, and you'll find Nigel there quite often, serving in the micro pub itself. One area of interest for any US listeners that you have is that George Washington's great-great-grandfather, Lawrence Washington, is buried in All Saints Churchyard at the top of the hill in Maldon. So there you go. So this is, as I said, it's a strong golden ale brewed with the Ella hop, and it's part of their Sailing Barge series, which they feature a series. Last year they did one on aircraft squadrons, Essex Aircraft Squadron. This year they're featuring barges nearby, and this is the Xylonite.
And at 7.4%, this is taking my eyebrows off just trying to sniff it. This is proper boozy.
There's an initial, you get quite a yeasty whiff when you initially open the bottle. Once you pour it into the glass, that will disappear, and you'll get quite a syrupy, boozy, orangey nose.
Mm-hmm. Quite strong. Anyway, let's get tucked in, boys. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, I can see what you mean about the smell. It's almost on the verge of being off-putting, but if you stick with it and you work with it, it kind of comes through. You get a little bit more fruit from there, a little bit more citrus on it. On the flavour, I mean, this is one of the, probably out of the 4 beers tonight, this is the one that I was really looking forward to, probably just because of the ABV on it, and it was kind of up in the stakes a little bit. I think on the flavour, I would never say this was a 7.4% beer. It's really easy on the mouth feel. You get lots of different flavours coming through. It is a little bit syrupy. There's some orange in there. There's some citrus, but it's got a fairly soft finish to it as well.
Well, I'm getting a boozy burn around the edges, but in the middle it's really smooth, and like you say, it's quite syrupy and quite gentle if you can ignore the boozy edges.
Get some.
It's interesting. Yeah, now you say that, it is literally just around the edges of the tongue as well that you get that boozy burn.
Yeah.
Get some orange barley sugar. It's very. See, I've read reports of this with its bitterness being quite apparent on cask, but I'm not getting any of that bitterness. Not really at all. It's quite smooth, very drinkable. As I say, the alcohol's round the edges, but the syrupiness sort of squashes it and makes you want to go back for more. This is a very, very drinkable, dangerously drinkable beer.
Oh, absolutely, and it kind of, because I've been to the micro pub that you mentioned in the introduction to this brewery, Justin, and that place is on its own just a place to behold. It's like sitting in your mate's front room and having a pint, and that's the size of it as well. When we say it's a micro pub, it quite literally is the size of your mate's front room, and all their beers are on offer there, and they're all fresh and they're all freshly pulled as well, and this has got exactly the same taste as the couple of pints that I had when I was in there. It tastes like it's straight out of the cask.
With Maldon as well, if you head out to Maldon when this show goes out on the Friday, which is the 30th, the other Malden brewery, Mighty Oak, which used to actually be based in Brentwood, the Mighty Oak Brewery is opening their own micro pub at the top of the high street. So
I saw that the other day.
Micro pubs.
I went past it. Yeah. Malden's becoming a hotbed for micro pubs. There'll be a Malden mile soon before we know what's going on.
Well, there's a few good pubs there as well. Essex. So yeah, it's well worth a look if you're down there. Sort of, it's great. We quite often go there for a stroll, stroll out to the headland there, look out over the Blackwater estuary. There's a big playground for kids. My kids are a little bit old for it now, but in the summer there's a water park. You can sit by the boats and have a beer or three. And it's well worth a look.
I think also, just to carry on linking our shows together this season, those of you that would listen to Lee Hamilton talking at the end of last week's show spoke about how he gets his oysters for their oyster stout from Maldon as well. So just brings it all together nicely as Essex just slowly becoming the brewing and beer capital of the country.
Well, Malden actually Brewery do a fantastic oyster stout. I did consider, it was one of the beers that I considered going with tonight, but I was thinking that with the hot black and maybe not, I want to do a stout. But I kept with this strong golden after tasting it, and I thought, yeah, this is the one I want to run with because I really enjoy this beer. It's not like, I can't say, oh, it's like so and so beer. It's one of those beers that I can't picture with the yellow hop in it and the strength and the syrupiness and the oranginess coming through. I can't think of another beer like this that I've had.
No, I've got no point of reference here. I've got nothing that I can compare that to that I've ever drunk before. It's really quite unique in that way.
Mark, thoughts?
I don't like it. If it didn't have that boozy burn to it, I think it'd be a really nice beer because I love the stickiness and the smoothness of it. But the booziness kills it for me. But I've never been into really boozy beers, so there you go. If you love your boozy beers, then check this one out.
See, I'm getting less and less of it the more I drink it. So that booziness, but mine's probably at slightly warmer temperature. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had to put mine to one side for the time being, and I've just quickly dived back into the hot black as well. So I wanted to give that another go. I'm getting a little bit more of the flavours coming through that you guys were talking about. I'm not going to say, I can suddenly taste everything, because I can't. It has warmed slightly, it's aired slightly. There's a few more flavours coming through, much more of the citrus and the pine coming through now. I'm still not picking up any of the roasted flavours on that, but it is turning into quite a nice beer. And I've probably got a good half a bottle left, which is probably going to get hammered after the show.
We're going to go through loads of these after the show. Excuse my strenuous as I try and puff the cork out of the next beer. There we go, done it.
Well, let's all try and undo this. This next beer is basically like a wine bottle. It's got the foil top. And long-time listeners will know how much Steve and I struggle with these types of bottles. So while we do that...
It's a cork. It shouldn't be too tough.
Well, last time we had one...
He says.
Bloody ages. Steve, Instagram of the week, mate. Do we have one?
Yes. Hang on. There we go. Yes, the Instagram of the week this week. Prize this prize. Great big box of nothing. There could be only one this week in Halloween week. Picture after picture themed with Halloween and pumpkin beers, all featuring a different range of Lego characters. Mr. Beer Farts, step up and collect your great big box of nothing. You are this week's winner of the Prize This Prize. That picture is up on our Instagram feed. It's also in tonight's show notes. And if you want to enter your own picture for the Prize This Prize, put it up on Instagram and tag it with cheers, guys. And if it catches my eye, your very own great big box of nothing will be winging its way to you.
Very good. Now, this next beer is in a big old wine bottle type bottle. Got cork and everything. Foil top. 7.7%. Tell us a little bit about this beer, Justin.
Yeah, sure. This is, and I'd like to thank, very much need to thank before we start anything, Roland for giving us these beers. This is a 750 bottle. It's the Van Kannor. It's commissioned by Roland to celebrate the birth of his first grandchild. Van Kannor is, people will know him as Roland Kannor if you're not familiar with the brewery, but it's the full and proper name. Ever since the outbreak of the Second World War, when the Second World War, they dropped the Van from the name. So it's a limited run of 1,000 bottles. It's a triple fermented beer with beer, wine, and champagne yeast. It's hand riddled and turned as a champagne would be. It's comes in a corked cage bottle, and it's a bit special. This was the last beer that Sophie Durand, who now works for Muntons on their experimental brews, she was the last beer she brewed with Brentwood Brewery. It's based, I don't know if people are familiar with the beer called Deus, which is a Belgian beer which is sent over to France, to Champagne region, to have the Champenoise treatment to it. It's a bit special, is this. It's a bit special.
I'd just like to echo your thanks to the brewery, Justin, because, as you say, they did supply us with a beer to do tonight. Before we tuck into this, I'd also like to thank you for supplying the other beers to us as well tonight, Justin, because you did source these. Apart from the Brewer's Gold, which, despite what you said at the beginning as to how widely available it is in supermarkets, I searched all over fucking Essex, and you think I could find the thing? No. But I eventually did find it. So, yeah, thanks to you and thanks to Brentwood Brewery for this. It looks lovely in the glass. It's got loads of fizz running up the side. It's got a bubbly head. It almost looks like champagne in the glass. It's dark. It's a lovely amber colour. The aroma is all over the place. I'm getting all sorts of this aroma. Can we just dive into this, because I'm really excited about this beer?
Sure.
Yeah,
While you dive in, I'll just tell you a bit about Brentwood Brewery as well.
Okay. Cheers.
Local brewery to me. Cheers, guys. They've been brewing commercially since 2006. Formed after a conversation in a pub where the founders David Holmes and Roland Kannor decided they could brew a beer better than they had been drinking. They now are on Coop Farm. They've run national acclaim from Seba. Roland's son Ethan is now the head brewer after Sophie left, and he has taken up the Elephant School range, which you may see out and about, and working on some really good and exciting new beers. I was very lucky to go over there and spend the afternoon with them recently. Very candid about what they do, where they're going, their views on beer. I had a really good afternoon and good interview, and if you want to see that, that's up on my blog now. So, what are your thoughts?
Steve, you go first, mate.
it's I know why you've done that, you git, because it's ridiculously complex. I've got to say this. The aroma is all over the place, the flavours all over the place. My best shot at the aroma is peaches and cream. That's as far as I can go with what I've got going on in there. On the flavour, it's simply stunning. You get an initial mouth of fizz. Once that dies down, you get a little bit of the strongness of the beer hits you, and then there's a wave of what can only be described as like as a Belgian strong beer comes through. Again, not talking bananas and cloves. We're just talking, that real strong Belgian beer profile you get from something like Vale. It's incredible. It's beer, wine, and champagne yeast all mixed together in a glass. It's probably everything you could want from that combination.
Yeah, it's quite vinous on the nose. You're getting kind of hints of champagne and stuff coming through on that. Lovely, active mouthfeel to it. Again, it's quite boozy, especially, it's coming through with those white wine notes, I think. I can't get much more beyond that other than knowing that it's a beer rather than a glass of wine.
There's lots of I'm getting fruity peach and allspice in the background on the aroma, and lots of honeyed peach juice flavour with there's white pepper and coriander, and it's quite warming actually to a certain degree, and it just lingers forever. This beer, I absolutely adore it. This is the beer
I'm chuffed. I'm chuffed that I called a flavour before you did. I called peach first. I'm having that. I'm going to hang my hat on that and quite happily sit back and enjoy the rest of this and let you finish your description of it, mate.
This is the beer that I'm having on Christmas morning. Deus, the beer I mentioned, I've had on a couple of occasions. This is the beer that for me, I don't need to open a bottle of champagne. I can have this beer, share it round. It's half the strength of a bottle of champagne. It's only 7.7%. But it's just this says I'm celebrating, and this was the essence of the beer itself in how it came about. It is a celebration beer. It's not cheap, but now you can see why. Hopefully it's coming across. The size of the bottle, I know that you mentioned it in your show a little while ago, last season, about the cost of this beer, but you can see now with the effort, the time that's gone into it, how well it's crafted, how complex the flavours are, why this beer is at the price point, and it is limited. There are only 1,000 bottles. Why it's at the price point that it is.
What's the price of it
fair,
again?
mate.
$29.99.
Okay.
If you see it as a celebration beer, then you can understand why it's at there. Because if you're in a restaurant and you were having a celebration, that would be a cheap, dare I say, a cheap glass of champagne.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that would all be fizz up your nose and gone. This has got far more depth, far more complexity than, for me, the best champagne could ever have.
I think with that, in that respect, if you were out with a group of mates, 3 or 4 of you, and you saw it on the menu, and you were like, you know what, we're going to split that. We're all going to go in on that. It's well worth the buy. And I think also from the point of view of you mentioned earlier, Justin, we do the bottle share in Chelmsford. I think if we were to put this to them and say, look, guys, if we all put a few quid in, we can get a bottle of this. We can all have a good glass of it as well for what you're paying. And actually, it's a beer that would go down really well.
Yeah, I'm trying to get Roland to come along to a bottle share. I think at the next one we're going to have Ian from the Essex Brewery Company. I think he's coming down and get more Essex brewers involved. One thing that I have found, and this strikes me as very, very odd, is that talking to Essex brewers, they don't actually talk to each other about what they're doing and what they're producing, for fear of giving out any secrets and so on and so forth. If you're listening, Essex brewers, please talk to each other. You're producing some fantastic beer, and I'd like to see some collaborations and some Essex bits and bobs going on. So I hope you are listening, and I hope you're taking note, because keep going in the way you're going, because you're doing it right.
It's interesting you say that, because I'd say that this is very much a golden age for collaboration in beer, and it strikes me as being strange of what you just said there, that you've got a brewing scene in Essex which is clearly thriving, but yet the brewers aren't working together to kind of push those boundaries. And I know in the early days of the blogs that you were writing about the scene in Essex, Justin, you were saying that that's all you want them to do, is you want them to stop producing traditional beer and start just experimenting a little bit more. And do you see that happening more now, or are they still afraid of experimentation?
Well, one thing that I hear quite often is that the speaking to publicans are frightened that these beers won't sell, because anything over 4.2%, they say, is or can't go with it. We've got to have a golden ale. We've got to have this. We've got to have that. Now, clearly, drinking some of these beers, you can see that two of them are over it, and they would sell rather well in lots of places, I would say. Now, the Essex region is the only thing that really covers it is SEBR's, Society of Independent Brewers, and that area is East Anglia. So that travels all the way up from Grimsby, all the way up there, all the way down to Brentwood, which could be a 3-hour or so journey to cover everyone in that region. They have tried to do smaller meetings, but they're just not getting it together. I think if they came together as Essex Brewer, almost an Essex Brewer collective, I think we could see some big changes. There are, as I say, they are trying different things. Wibblers did a spontaneously fermented beer. I don't think it was last year or the year before. That was quite a limited edition one, and you see them here and there, but you really have to look out for them, and they go quickly and they are successful. So I'd like to see more of that, but there is always a place for a good traditional bitter. So it's about the balance between the experimenting and the other thing, and that's why, for example, Brentwood, who we're drinking now, look out for White Elephant coming soon from under the Elephant School label, which should be Ethan's working on a white mild, which, having seen him recently, he knows where he's going with it. So that'll be coming pretty soon, and I know they've got some of their Chalkwork Orange aging in spirit casks, so look out for that as well coming in the Christmas time.
Having had the Chalkwork Orange, yeah, that would work really well as a barrel aged beer. That's one that I'll look forward to searching out when it comes out, I think. So final thoughts on this beer, I think, because I'm nearing the end of my glass. I'm still really enjoying it. It's having an effect on my speech. I can't get my words out. I'm enjoying this beer. It's syrupy, it's sticky, it's sweet. There's almost like a hint of golden syrup going on in there. It's got a lovely clean finish to it. The fizz in it is still hanging around in the glass. I've still got a little bubbly head. I've still got a lot of life in it, and that's just tickling the palate as well as it goes down. I've really enjoyed this beer. It's been a real treat to finish on. Mark, what about you, mate?
I think if it's a little bit lighter alcohol-wise, I'd be enjoying it a lot more. But I can see what it's trying to be, or what it is, rather. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of these beers that have quite a vinous overhead, and that's kind of off-putting for me. When I was sniffing it, I was thinking, oh, this might be a little bit saison-y, but unfortunately it's not. But I can definitely see this as a beer that you would sit down and you would just sip over the course of, an hour or so with your friends. And, at this, the 30 quid a bottle is one that you would probably share out amongst a group of people, and really get the value of it from that. So I can't dismiss it just because I don't like the vinous overtones to it.
Out of the four, it's tough to call between the Brewer's Gold, which is a solid, really enjoyable sessionable beer, and this one, which is the complete other end of the spectrum in terms of its flavour profile and everything that it's doing. I think in terms of accessibility, and if we're talking about the Essex Brewers Showcase being about making these beers accessible to the general public, then I've got to go with the Brewer's Gold because it's supposedly widely available. And it's probably at a price point that most people could afford, whereas I think that the Van Kannor is an absolute luxury, and we've just been very, very lucky to try this beer on the show.
I will repeat those comments, basically. Brewer's Gold for me, home run. but their Van Kannor is promising something special if you fancy just sitting back in front of a fire and having a nice, luxurious beer.
So Justin, my final question to you would be, in a single paragraph, sum up the Essex brewing scene right now.
I think we're going somewhere. Where are we going? I don't know yet, but and no cajoling from me, they're all trying to think outside. People are trying to think outside the box, trying to do things a bit different. As I say, there is a space for the traditional and the adventurous there. Probably the more adventurous stuff for the time being will be in bottled or limited quantities, so or beer festivals and so on and so forth. I'd like to see some keg at beer festivals or breweries running their own beer festivals. But Wibblers will soon be opening their own tap room. Brentwood Brewery have their own tap room now that you can go along and drink their beers, as I say. So this is something that you can see. Billericay have their micro pub. So this is something that, whereas they've not been taken in pubs, they are willing to go forward and open their own tap rooms to showcase the beers. So you can go around and drink Essex beers. I am aware this is a long paragraph. Come into Essex.
Not for you, it's
and drink
not.
the beer. Yeah, it's not like me, is it? No, come into Essex and drink the beer, please. And if you want connections for any of these breweries or the brewers, one brewery I haven't mentioned is Saffron Walden, up in Saffron Brewery up in Saffron Walden. Good blokes producing some excellent beer as well. There's Holt Brewery. Ian's breweries are John's breweries are excellent there. So we've got lots and lots of breweries all over the county producing some fantastic beer. If you want connections or links into those breweries, please just let me know. I can put you in touch with the people. If you see a beer that you're interested in, let me know and I'll try my hardest to get hold of it for you.
Well, thank you, Justin, and thank you for putting these beers together tonight and for giving us an opportunity to trial something that we hope will become as a regular feature as the homebrew specials each season. So just before I hand back to Mark, just to say that we really value the listener feedback at this point, and if you've enjoyed this Essex Brewery Showcase this week, let us know, because we do have other bloggers around the country that are interested in doing a similar sort of thing. We've got Rachel from Sussex is keen. We've got people from the Midlands that are keen. Miles is keen to do something from the Northeast. If this is something you want to see us do every season, and if this is something you want to listen to, let us know, because it's only going to be based on your feedback as to whether we go forward with this idea or not.
Indeedy. And don't forget, you can get your beers from Ales by Mail, Beautiful Beers, Beer Merchants, and Ebria, who all now offer a 10% discount to Beer O'Clock Show listeners on any beers on their websites. Check out all the details on our beer list page. You can find us online at beeroclockshow.co.uk, on Twitter at Beer O'Clock Show, on Instagram at Beer O'Clock Show. Steve is on Untapped at Beer Show Steve. I'm on Untapped at Beer Show Mark, and I'm on Twitter at Beer Show Mark. Justin Mason is on Twitter at 1970s Boy, the random bloke off Twitter.
Could I just add, you can also find me at Beer in Essex as well.
That's right, which is another one of your little projects.
It is.
What's your main website address?
Is Get Beer, Drink Beer, which you can find at masonjust.blogspot.com.
Very good. Stevie, what's coming up next week, mate?
Next week we're going from one end of the country to the other, but we are staying with the traditional, as we are going to feature the most chocolatey stout that you're ever likely to come across. It is Sam Smith's Chocolate Stout.
I'm looking forward to that one. Justin, thanks for joining us this week, mate, and bringing all that you brought to this episode.
It's been my pleasure.
Cheers,
thank you ever so much for letting me showcase Essex beers.
And Stevie, until next week.
Been the highlight of my week.
And mine. Bye-bye.